This is what people like you deserve.
The first drop of dirty water hit his forehead with a cold, humiliating slap. Marcus froze. For a split second, the world inside the polished corporate lobby went completely silent. The kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes your heart pound louder than it should. Then the bucket tipped fully. Foamy gray water cascaded down Marcus Reed's head, rushing over his face, soaking through his Navy janitor uniform, dripping from his chin in thick, embarrassing streams. The dirty soap bubbles slid down his cheeks like tears he refused to shed. Gasps exploded across the hallway. Oh my God, did she really just... No way. Dozens of sharply dressed employees stood frozen along the marble walkway, phones halfway raised, eyes wide with a mixture of shock and cruel fascination. Standing beside him, too close, too comfortable, was Brittany Whitmore. Her manicured hand rested lightly on Marcus's shoulder as she laughed. Laughed. Not nervous laughter. Not shocked laughter. Cruel laughter. Well, she smirked loudly, tilting the now empty yellow bucket. Maybe now you'll actually clean the floors properly. A few people in the crowd snickered. Someone in the back whispered, "That's what he gets." Marcus didn't move. His hand tightened slowly around the white cleaning towel he was holding. Water dripped steadily from his sleeves onto the spotless marble he had polished barely 30 minutes ago. But his eyes were calm. Too calm. And that should have been Brittany's first warning. But she missed it, because Brittany Whitmore had always been the kind of woman who mistook silence for weakness. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the quiet janitor standing in front of them was not who he appeared to be. And in less than 5 minutes, this entire building was about to turn upside down. Welcome, story lovers. Red Heart. If you enjoy powerful emotional stories filled with shocking twists, workplace drama, and satisfying karma, you're in the right place. Before we continue, thumbs up, hit that like button. Bell subscribe for more gripping stories. Speech balloon and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now, let's continue the story. Marcus Reed had been working at Whitmore and Klein Corporate Tower for exactly 11 days. 11 quiet, invisible days. Every morning, he arrived before sunrise in the same modest janitor uniform. Every evening, he left without saying much more than a polite goodnight. Most employees barely noticed him, but Brittany Whitmore noticed everyone, especially people she believed were beneath her. Brittany was the daughter of one of the company's senior partners. She walked through the building like she owned the air people breathed. Designer heels, perfect hair, sharp tongue, and an ego big enough to fill the entire lobby. 3 days ago, she had first spoken to Marcus. Not kindly, not respectfully, but with that same thin smile she wore now. "You missed a spot," she had said then, pointing at an already spotless section of marble. Marcus had simply nodded. "I'll take another look, ma'am." That calm response had irritated her, because Brittany thrived on reactions. She enjoyed watching people squirm. Over the next few days, the small jabs continued. Little comments, sharp looks, public corrections that weren't necessary. Each time, Marcus responded the same way. Polite, quiet, unbothered. Until this morning. The lobby had been unusually busy. Quarterly board meeting day. Executives everywhere. Tension in the air. Marcus was quietly mopping near the central walkway when Brittany arrived with her usual morning entourage, 2 junior associates who laughed a little too hard at everything she said. She stopped when she saw him. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Seriously?" Brittany said loudly. "You're mopping during peak hours now?" Marcus looked up calmly. "The schedule says mornings, ma'am." One of her friends snorted. Brittany folded her arms. "You people always have an excuse." The hallway grew quieter. People were listening now. Marcus simply dipped the mop back into the bucket. That really irritated her. Because again, no reaction. No embarrassment. No apology. Just quiet dignity. And Brittany Whitmore hated being ignored. Her lips curled slowly. "Maybe you need a little motivation," she said. Before anyone could process what she meant, she grabbed the bucket, lifted it, and dumped it. Back in the present, the last drops of dirty water slid down Marcus's jaw. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Something about the way he stood there now. Still, composed, watching. It made the laughter start to die. Brittany finally noticed. Her smile faltered slightly. Relax, she scoffed. It's just water. Marcus slowly raised his hand and wiped foam from his eyebrow. When he spoke, his voice was calm and even. Are you finished, Ms. Whitmore? The way he said her name, it wasn't fearful. It wasn't submissive. It was knowing. A small crease formed between Brittany's brows. Before she could respond, the elevator at the far end of the lobby dinged. Soft, but sharp enough to cut through the tension. Several employees turned automatically. The private executive elevator. It almost never opened during regular hours. The doors slid apart, and everything changed. Out stepped a tall, silver-haired man in an immaculate charcoal suit. Harold Whitmore, Brittany's father, and CEO of Whitmore and Klein. His expression was neutral at first. Then his eyes landed on the scene, on the soaked janitor, on the empty bucket, on his daughter's hand still resting on Marcus's shoulder. Harold Whitmore stopped walking. His face went pale. Not confused, not angry, terrified. The shift in his expression was so sudden that several nearby employees felt a chill crawl up their spines. Because powerful men don't look like that, unless something is very, very wrong. Harold's voice came out tight. Marcus, the entire lobby froze. Brittany blinked. Dad, but Harold wasn't looking at her. He was staring directly at the drenched janitor. Marcus slowly straightened to his full height. And for the first time since the water was poured, he smiled. It wasn't a big smile. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight. The kind of weight that makes rooms go quiet. Good morning, Harold, Marcus said calmly. And just like that, the air in Whitmore and Klein Corporate Tower completely changed. Because the quiet janitor was not just a janitor, not even close. Marcus Reed was the majority silent investor behind Whitmore and Klein. The man who had quietly purchased controlling interest 6 months ago. The man whose final approval determined whether the company expanded or collapsed. And Brittany Whitmore had just publicly humiliated him in front of the entire company. You could literally hear hearts dropping in the room. One employee whispered, barely breathing, "Oh no." Brittany slowly removed her hand from Marcus's shoulder. Her smile was completely gone now. Dad, what is he talking about? But Harold Whitmore wasn't answering. Because in that moment, he knew his daughter hadn't just embarrassed a janitor. She had just humiliated the most powerful man connected to the company. And the consequences were about to begin. Marcus calmly picked up his fallen mop. Water still dripped from his sleeves onto the marble floor. But now, every single person in that lobby was looking at him differently. The invisible man had just become the most important man in the room. He glanced once at Brittany. Not angry, not loud, just disappointed. And somehow, that was worse. Much worse. The silence in the lobby was no longer ordinary. It was heavy, dangerous. The kind of silence that makes people suddenly very aware of their own breathing. Marcus Reed stood calmly in the center of it all, water still dripping steadily from his uniform onto the marble floor. The soaked fabric clung to his shoulders, but his posture remained straight, unshaken. Across from him, Harold Whitmore looked like a man who had just watched his entire career flash before his eyes. Marcus, Harold said again, his voice tighter now, carefully controlled. I wasn't aware you were visiting the building today. Visiting? A few employees exchanged quick, confused glances. Brittany's brow furrowed deeper. Dad, what is going on? She demanded, her earlier confidence cracking at the edges. Why are you talking to the janitor like? Brittany, Harold's voice cut through the air like glass. Sharp. Final. It was the first time anyone in the building had ever heard him use that tone with his daughter. Brittany blinked. Harold slowly stepped forward, his eyes never leaving Marcus. Then, in a move that made several executives physically straighten in shock, the CEO of Whitmore and Klein extended his hand toward the soaked janitor. Mr. Reed, Harold said carefully, on behalf of the company, I sincerely apologize for what just happened. The lobby erupted into whispers. Phones lowered. Eyes widened. Someone near the back actually muttered, "No way." Because powerful CEOs don't apologize publicly. Not like this. Not unless they absolutely have to. Marcus looked at the offered hand for a brief moment. Water dripped from his sleeve. Plink, plink, plink. Then, slowly, he reached out and shook it. His grip was firm, controlled, and when he spoke, his voice remained calm, but now there was steel underneath it. "I appreciate the apology, Harold," Marcus said evenly. "But I think the situation requires a little more than that." Brittany's stomach dropped. Hard. She took a small step forward, forcing a laugh that sounded thin and brittle. "Okay, seriously, someone needs to explain the joke," she said, crossing her arms. "Because I'm clearly missing something." Marcus turned his head and looked directly at her. For the first time since the water had been poured, their eyes met, and Brittany felt something cold crawl down her spine. Not anger, not rage. Authority. The kind that doesn't need to raise its voice. "You're not missing anything, Ms. Whitmore," Marcus said quietly. "You're just seeing the full picture a little later than everyone else." A ripple of uncomfortable murmurs spread through the crowd. Brittany's cheeks flushed. "I don't know what kind of stunt this is," she snapped, "but you're still—" "Brittany." Harold's voice was low now. Warning. Dangerously low. She turned to him, frustrated. "What?" Harold inhaled slowly, like a man preparing for impact. Then he said the words that completely shattered the room. "Marcus Reed is the majority controlling investor of this company." Silence. Not the earlier tension-filled silence. This one was deeper, heavier, absolute. Brittany stared at her father. Once, twice. Then she laughed. A short, disbelieving sound. Okay, that's not funny. No one else was laughing. Her smile slowly began to fade. She turned back toward Marcus. Really looking at him now. At the calm in his eyes. At the complete lack of embarrassment in his posture. At the way senior executives were suddenly standing straighter. Watching him. Waiting. Brittany's throat went dry. "You're joking," she whispered. Marcus didn't answer. Because he didn't have to. Harold did. "He purchased controlling interests 6 months ago," Harold said quietly. "We've been finalizing the restructuring plan." The yellow bucket slipped from Brittany's fingers. It hit the marble floor with a hollow clatter that echoed far too loudly in the stunned lobby. "Oh my God," someone whispered. Brittany took a slow step back. Her face had gone pale. "But he's a janitor," she said weakly. Marcus finally moved. He bent down calmly, picked up the fallen bucket, and set it upright beside the mop. Then he looked back at her. "No," Marcus said gently. "I'm a man who believes in observing a workplace before making decisions about its future." The meaning of that sentence landed like a hammer. Several managers visibly stiffened. Brittany's lips parted, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. Marcus continued, his tone still level, but now carrying quiet authority that filled the entire lobby. "For the past 11 days, he said, I've watched how people in this building treat those they believe are beneath them." His gaze swept slowly across the gathered employees. Some immediately looked down. Others shifted uncomfortably. A few looked outright nervous. Then his eyes returned to Brittany. "And today," Marcus finished softly, "you gave me a very clear demonstration." The weight of those words pressed down on the room like gravity. Brittany swallowed hard. "Marcus, I didn't know." "You're right," he interrupted calmly. "You didn't." That almost sounded worse than anger. Tears of panic began to gather in Brittany's eyes. Because now she understood. This wasn't just embarrassment. This was consequences. Real ones. Harold stepped forward quickly, his voice urgent. "Marcus, I assure you, this behavior does not reflect the values of Whitmore and Klein. We will address this immediately." Marcus studied him for a long moment. The tension in the room stretched tight. Then Marcus nodded once. Slow, deliberate. "I believe you, Harold," he said. A visible wave of relief passed through the older man's shoulders. But Marcus wasn't finished. His eyes shifted once more to Brittany. She stood frozen now, all earlier confidence completely gone. The powerful woman who had laughed minutes ago now looked very, very small. Marcus's voice softened slightly, but somehow carried even more weight. Respect, he said quietly, isn't something you show only to people who can benefit you. Brittany's eyes dropped to the floor. Sometimes, Marcus continued, the way you treat the quietest person in the room tells everyone exactly who you are. No one in the lobby moved. No one spoke. Marcus picked up his mop again. Water still dripped softly onto the marble. Then he gave Harold a small, polite nod. I think we'll discuss the company's future at the board meeting, he said calmly. And just like that, he walked forward, through the stunned crowd, through the silent hallway, leaving behind a lobby full of people who would never forget what they had just witnessed. And Brittany Whitmore, standing frozen in the center of it all, finally understood. Some mistakes don't make noise when they happen, but the consequences? They echo for a very, very long time.